This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fonslow, and today I get the distinct pleasure of having, I don't know if he's a competitor or a teammate. He's definitely under the same umbrella of the Aftermarket Radio Network. It's Hunt Demarest. He is a accountant, and maybe I'll let him further introduce himself. But I felt very important to ask questions about money type stuff, tax stuff from our perspective. He has his own podcast, talks a lot to the shop owners, but he's very, very knowledgeable. I thought it would be a really great episode just to talk about stuff from our perspective in the trenches. So before we go too far here, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Napa. It's no secret we're facing a technician shortage. Napa Auto Care is addressing that. The free 2-year apprentice program offers a variety of training to produce a technician with 3 ASE certifications. To learn more, members can visit member.napaautocare.com. All right. Thank you, Hunt, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I really, really appreciate it.
Beautiful ad read there, like a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when you reached out, I thought this was a really cool idea because, like you said, I have an accounting firm. We specialize in automotive repair shops, and most of the stuff that I talk about in my business, talk about in the podcast, is all financial related, directed at shop owners, right? So when you said, "Hey, there's obviously stuff that I talk about that directly affects technicians as well," but kind of going into that, I think is a really cool topic, and I'm excited about it.
Nobody's ever explained any of it to me. Just even filling out tax forms when you get hired on. I get a piece of paper and I can claim. I'm not sure how many to claim. Some, and it seems almost political which number to use. Some will say the bigger number, so they take less out of your paycheck. Your paycheck's bigger. Now you get your money, and it's up to you at the end of the year to have the money ready to pay in. And then some people would have you claim 0 or 1 so that your checks are small, but hey, you might get a nice big check at the end of the year. And I think I've just tried to shoot for about the right number of dependents as I really have. And I mean, admittedly, the last few years, I'm always paying in. Always. So that would be like, I guess question number 1 is, hey, I'm taking on this new job, or I've been wherever for however long, and I've always claimed 0, I've always claimed 1, I've always claimed 8.
Like where would you go on that? Yeah.
Is there a logical thing to do, or is it really, it's up to you, man. If you want a low number and maybe get a check at the end of the year, that works. Or claim big, your checks are going to be bigger. Less taxes taken out, you're going to probably pay in at the end of the year, and it could be significant.
The big thing there, too, is, there's always 2 camps of this, right? No one's ever advocating, well, get it exactly right so you don't owe anything, right? It's always people being like, well, hey, I love getting a huge refund, right? Everyone thinks, oh, I got this monstrous refund. I got money in my pocket. Like, the government gave me money. I always laugh about when people say, like, oh, refunds are up this year. I'm like, the refund is not the federal government giving you back their money. They're giving you back your money that they took out, right? So, So that idea is always kind of funny. And then you have on the other side of, a complete libertarian. It's like, they're not getting a single cent before they absolutely have to, right? I'll owe money and I'll pay it at the end of the year. The big thing that I like to do, I'll tell you the 2 options and my personal preference on things is, you can either pay it all in there now and get it back at the end of the year. And some people say, well, you're giving a tax-free loan to the government. Or if you want to go to the other side of it and you want to claim, a bunch of exemptions and not take out that much, that's fine, but you're going to owe taxes at the end of the year if you shoot too low. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, and maybe you're savvy, and maybe you like to dabble in investing, and you like to do stuff, and you want that money throughout the year, and you feel like it's going to work for you, then great. But if you're going to do that, you better be very good with your money, right? Because the absolute last thing that you want to do is get involved and get behind on your taxes. Hey, you don't pay your credit card, you don't pay other things, they'll yell and scream. You don't pay the Uncle Sam, they get nasty, and they get nasty extremely fast. And one of the things that's, as I say this, that I see from the shop owner side is when a technician does not pay their taxes, the IRS will let you go for a little bit. And then they not only will contact you, but they'll contact your employer. and say, hey, you know what? Matt's behind on taxes. You need to start garnishing your wages. And, if you're a technician listening to this, you don't see the shop owner running payroll, nothing pisses them off more until they have to set up a child support garnishment or an income tax garnishment. I'm not going to tell the shop owner on here, but because it's really not legal. But if he has someone that has a garnishment, he fires them. He's like, I'm not messing with that crap. And I've told him, I'm like, you really can't do that. But that's a big thing is if you're going to do this and you're going to put a bunch of exemptions or a bunch of extra deductions on there and keep it low, you better be very good with your money, right? So you should be thinking in yourself, like, can I trust myself or am I going to spend everything that I get? The other end of the spectrum is, claim about nothing, right? Claim single, claim zero, don't add any dependents, don't do anything for your house mortgage. And you're most likely going to get a refund at the end of the year. Depending on how many kids you have and stuff like that, it could be a pretty big one. And a lot of people say, well, it's a tax-free loan from the government or a tax-free loan to the government. But realistically, what is a savings account paying right now? 0.1%, right? It's like, it's not like there's something out there that's a risk-free investment of 6% that you're missing out on. You really aren't. And in that situation, you're going to get a windfall of cash probably in April when you go to file these things, and you're not going to have to worry about owing. Unless you are very good with your money, I would go to the big refund side. Realistically, if you look at America and you look at people naturally, if you make it, you're going to spend it. And I see this firsthand. I have people that make $50,000 a year. I have people that make millions of dollars a year. How much money they actually have is not directly related to how much money they make. I have people that make $1 million a year that are absolutely broke because they make $1 million and they spend $1.1 million. I have people that have never probably made more than $100,000 a year and are millionaires, own real estate paid in full, but it's their own kind of personal spending. And so you just got to be aware of who you are and what you're going to do with that money. And for most people, getting that big refund is going to be the better thing to do.
That makes sense. I don't think it's a secret at all that the vast majority of Americans, if they had an emergency,
they don't have money for it.
Yeah, it was either 2,000 or maybe 1,000.
It's a crazy low number. And the percentage of people that would have to, I know what you're talking about, that have to go into debt or credit card debt to pay for an unexpected expenses, I think it was like 70, 80%. It was, the majority of America does not have these rainy day funds. And if nothing else, hey, you don't have a rainy day fund, have that next tax refund. But usually by the time that tax refund comes, people have already spent it or mentally already kind of put stuff in a shopping cart that they're going to hit click on when they get it.
Yeah. And I mean, the conversation probably leads right into the obvious is I think that the vast majority of techs, including myself, spend a lot of money on tools and equipment. You could argue whether we quote unquote need them or not, but it's a crazy amount of money. Some of it is kind of expected. You get a job for a shop and let's just say you're not on the lube rack. You're kind of expected to have, I mean, I hate to put a number on it, right? But thousands of dollars invested in tools. And then you have the vendors, literally the stores, the providers showing up at your shop every week. You got Snap-on the truck, Matco, I mean, we could name drop a whole bunch of them. And they show up and they've got the screaming deal. And it seems like they really go after when you don't have a whole lot. And then it's like, hey, you know what? Let me sharpen my pencil here. I can sell you this toolbox and this wrench set and this socket set. And normally this would go for $10,000. But, we're running a promo. And if you sign up for Snap-on credit or the credit, we can knock off more. But now you're, basically putting it on a credit card, if you will. No card, but with an absurdly high interest rate. Don't even talk about the end number. $30 a week.
Forever.
Yeah. I think it must be based on either 5 or 10 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people buy it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say am still to a degree guilty of buying a lot of stuff.
And in the past, you used to get a deduction for that, right? And that something that maybe made it sting a little bit less, right? Some of the stuff that you had to pay for out of pocket, some of the uniforms that you had to pay for out of pocket, boots, gloves, stuff like that, you could all write off on your taxes. But major tax law changes in 2018, a lot of things came out, but one of the big things that really affected technicians, and I've seen shops, do stuff to kind of offset this, is they stopped unreimbursed employee expenses, which allowed technicians to write off the cost of their tools. And just like you said, of whether you need the tools or not, or somewhere in between, technicians on average are spending a ton of money on these tools. And now at this point, you can add them up if you want. Most people probably try to ignore it, but you're not getting any sort of deduction for those tools. I want to talk about the interest piece of this, after this, because that's something that I don't think a lot of people understand as well. But one of the things that, if you're sitting here and you're a technician and you are investing a lot into tools, and some of you might already have this in shops, is some of my shops are starting to do a tool reimbursement program. And so instead of saying, hey, you know what, Matt, you're at $35 an hour flat rate, we won't get into the flat rate drama or hourly and stuff like that. But instead of giving you a raise or something like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a tool truck allowance. So every single month, I'm going to give $100 to the Snap-on guy, to the Matco guy, to, whoever your favorite drug dealer is. And what that's going to do is that's going to give your payments or, a credit on the Snap-on truck. And the shop owner is going to get a deduction for that. No payroll taxes. And, it's kind of sidestepping that issue that we have right now. And for the shop owners that have done it, it's been really, really successful, because think about it. If you want to give $100 to the Snap-on guy right now, you got to make $140 on payroll, after you pay your taxes and everything like that, to pay the Snap-on guy. So not only are you saving money because your take-home pay is not going to the tool truck, also your employer, the shop owner, is saving money too, because they're not paying payroll taxes either. This is just a straight deduction for them. And so I've started to see stuff that's creative. And if you're sitting here thinking, hey, I'm spending a fortune, I'm due for a raise, or I want a raise, no, shop owners are going to kill me for be like, don't tell them how to negotiate against us. But, a cool idea to think about. It's like, hey, boss, hey, instead of doing that, why don't you give me some money for the Snap-on truck? Pay the guy directly. Yeah.
And I mean, seriously, every shop owner manager has to be feeling the pressure of compensation now more than ever. I mean, it seems like a weak argument. Negotiate against us. If they aren't, they will be, because people are coming for them.
Not to be mean, but I've been doing this. I don't look like I've been doing it that long, but I've been doing this for, almost 15 years now. And since I've started doing this, there's been a technician shortage, right? This is not a new event, and you can chime in because I'd be curious on your thoughts on this, but it feels like in the last 2 years, really since COVID, the technicians have realized what kind of spot they've been in. For the longest time, there was a shortage, but the technicians didn't leverage that. In the last 2 years, I've seen more cases than any other ones of technicians coming up to their boss and being like, Matt, you're going to pay me $37 an hour flat rate, or I'm going to go to this other shop that is going to. And, inevitably, my clients, the shop owners, are saying, hey, I need you here, because there's no such thing as a good unemployed technician. They're not out there. So I need to pay you whatever it is. And just like you said, if you're a shop owner and you don't realize how important your team is, then you're going to find out pretty quickly when you go in one day and you go from 4 techs down to 3 techs, and you start a ricochet effect, because a lot of people are kind of in this bubble and they're like, I'm making $28 an hour. And one of my clients says that they hate going to, we won't name any of the expos, but they hate taking their technicians to some of these places, because then they start talking with other techs that are kind of around them, and they're like, wait, Matt, what did you say that your guys are making? Holy cow, we don't even make half that, and then you have a really big issue.
Yep. I think Dutch Silverstein and I are going to have an episode where we're going to be talking a lot about numbers technicians should know about in the shop and shop management wise, and what that means to them, and to help further determine their value and what they can do to improve their value and stuff like that. But one thing we see regularly on, we'll pick on social media primarily, is discussions about what they're getting paid. And they're talking real numbers. The problem is it creates some resentments where it's probably not appropriate, in that you have to weigh where you live, because you can make $100,000 a year, because that seems to be like the new shop owners want $1 million for their shops. Technicians want $100,000 a year. Like, that's the brass ring. And there's many techs who are already making that, who can barely make ends meet because they live near Washington, DC. They live out on the West Coast, where the cost of living is outrageous. And then, maybe middle America, certain areas, they're making that 50, 60 grand a year, but they're doing great. And they read this stuff online and they're like, well, I'm worth 100 grand. But still, like you're saying, I can't agree more. I don't know if they realized it so much, because I think a lot of them knew it, but felt helpless to do much about it.
Or maybe didn't want to put, the owners in that position, because a lot of them, depending on how much tact you have when you have that conversation, you're essentially kind of holding them hostage a little bit, which, hey, you are your own business, right? If you're a technician, you're listening to this, you're a business owner yourself, right? You can take your services absolutely anywhere. Hey, you want to move to Hawaii? You can move to Hawaii and you can get a job tomorrow, right?
Probably before the plane lands.
Oh yeah. It's, and we see that stuff all the time. And a lot of people are like, why would they do that? All the stuff that I've done for them. It's like, really, how much stuff have you really done for them? And it's more the other way. It's, you take away the technicians, you don't have a business, right? You can take a service advisor away. You can do a lot of things. But if you don't have people fixing cars, you do not have an auto repair shop.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, organization. It's really close to organism. And I will forever not be able to comprehend the inability of individuals inside an organization to not look at everything as an organism of different systems working together to achieve whatever goal or goals. And it's hard to operate. It's hard for an organism to survive when all the systems aren't working properly or at all. And yet that's exactly what we see. Like, this important system, the technicians, the chefs in the kitchen, whatever you want to qualify them as, they're just, I guess, overlooked. I don't know. Maybe it's just the kind of that American way too, a little bit with the.
I think it's also kind of like the old school nature of this industry, which is changing, right? But it was like, hey, don't get your feelings hurt. This is business. Turn hours, shut up, do your job, and I'll pay you.
Yeah.
That's really still the way in some shops, I'm sure, but that's changing pretty quickly.
It's almost like a misunderstanding of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And what the hierarchy is and means. There absolutely is a hierarchy, but understanding the position of it and where it relates to everything else, it just seems wildly misunderstood by everybody. I mean, on all levels of it.
Yeah. It's all perception is reality, right? We see it from, the bottom to the top to the bottom, right? The perception that shop owners have of technicians is sometimes accurate, a lot of times skewed. And, the technician old school mentality of, well, hey, my shop owner is charging $150 an hour, labor rate. He's paying me $25. All that other money's going in his pocket. It's, anyone that's went from a technician to a shop owner is like, well, hey, I thought that, but after about a week of owning my own shop, I figured out where all that gap was going, if not more, but you got to be compassionate. You got to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And, one of the big things I always tell people is, like we were talking about, there's a tech shortage. Everyone wants that next tech. So they're always looking outside. Where is that guy? Where is that guy? And a lot of times they're not looking in their own shop to be like, hey, I was so focused on finding someone else. I'm not taking care of the guys that I do have. So great. I went and found a new technician. Steve quit. So I'm no better off. It's got to take care of your people,
That has long been a frustration of mine. They're talking about recruiting new people in. It's like, you better take care of the people you got now. Take care of the veterans, because then they become your best marketers. And you get that young person in there, and your veterans are doing very well for themselves. They like the culture of the shop. Now when that kid's thinking about, I'm out of here. I'm so sick of all this, that they can pull him aside or her aside and say, hey, this is a great place to work. You're really good at this. You're really good at that. You got to get better about this. You're so close. Just stick with it. So-and-so, they're going to take care of you. I've been here for 15 years. I'm never going to leave. That's how it could be.
Yeah, well, a lot of times too, it's, just communication, but it goes both ways. It's, you got to realize if, shop owners have a ton of stuff on their plate, they can't always sense it. And depending on how big their shop is, they might not even interact with these people, and a lot of times what catches people off guard is they're not maliciously trying to, piss people off or don't have the proper equipment or the workflow is shoddy or something like that really grinds technicians' gears. What I always tell people is like, hey, if you got a problem, the same way an owner is going to go talk to a technician, hey, if you got an issue, go talk to your boss. Hey, boss, I want to stay here. I like it. I like the people I work with. I need to address my pay. I need to address my vacation or lack thereof. We need to talk about how we start doing some training. I want to advance my skills. I want to grow my skill set, and being able to say, all right, you know what, Matt, I appreciate that. Now, if you work for a jerk, they might not say that, but I think a lot of them will, be like, hey, you know what? It wasn't I intentionally overlooked you. I want this to be a good place to work. I want you to be happy to be here. I do appreciate you. If you go to your shop owner and they are a jerk, go work for somewhere else, right? Shoot me an email. Depending on where you are, I probably know a good shop that you could go and work at. You're too valuable to be shown up to a shop that you're not appreciated, that you're underpaid on it. There's just so many opportunities out there.
Napa Auto Care was top rated in a national survey by consumers of car repair in the chains and independent repair shops category. Ratings were based on courtesy, timeliness, quality, price of repair, and percent of times the problem was fixed on the first visit. Napa Auto Care is the only banner program to make these ratings. Consumers are familiar with the Napa Auto Care brand, and you can benefit. Napa Auto Care has the largest network of independent professional shops in North America, with over 17,000 locations. Your independent repair facility can join this network and be supported through Napa's national marketing with the already successful Know How for All campaign, which promotes Auto Care Center specific offerings. You get support to promote your local repair facility with targeted media in local markets and in proven channels. Utilize a full calendar year of promotions with Napa Auto Care sales driver promotions that are 100% fully funded by Napa. This includes free email marketing, digital and print point of sale materials. Connect to their national presence by co-branding your locally known brand with the already nationally recognized Napa brand. Partner with Napa Smart Sign to educate customers with engaging videos that tell the why behind a needed repair or service. You can access and edit digital menu boards, template builder tools, social media feeds, and integrations with other Auto Care program elements. Offer a credit solution to customers with Napa Easy Pay consumer financing. Stay top of mind with your business's name embossed on the credit card. Have an online presence when consumers search for a local repair facility on Napa Online, which generates millions of views per month at no additional cost. If you are interested in partnering with Napa Auto Care and capitalizing on the Napa Know How for All national marketing campaign, contact your salesperson or servicing Napa Auto Care parts store. Number one question every tool guy gets. You know any good techs looking for a job?
Yep.
By far. The number one question they get.
Yeah.
And, to kind of finish the thought about it, I think it was happening pre-COVID, but it just seems like lately we're getting hit over the head with it, where I think there is kind of a gentleman's agreement between shop owners and not going to poach techs from each other. That's almost out the window.
Completely out the window, believe me.
Shop B runs into Shop A's lead tech at the grocery store. And, hey, how you like it over there? What would it take to maybe lure you over here? And I don't think that would have happened before. If they walked into your shop, open season, that is out the door. And then entities outside of the auto repair profession, much larger entities. So my favorite example, a friend of mine, he worked for shops forever. And like you said, like he had to buy pay for his own uniforms, paid for his own training. Pay was He gets approached about a job with a forklift company, a forklift dealership. And it turns out they have multiple locations. And I mean, within months, he's making more than he's ever made fixing cars. He doesn't have to pay for his uniforms.
Full benefits.
Yeah, he's got benefits. He never had health insurance before. Now he has health insurance, life insurance, a retirement. And, when he called to tell me about it, I said, in a year, you'll be the shop foreman. You'll be running the place. I was wrong. It took 11 months. Yeah, and now he's moved on into the training end of things where now he goes around and trains the other locations on kind of diagnostics on these forklifts that a lot of them, a lot of our ideas of forklifts are the, kind of the propane small ones, 4,000 pounds, 6,000 pounds. Well, geez, no, they got all different sizes and many of them have powertrains out of automobiles, like a pickup truck specifically.
You're like, this is just a pickup truck driving backwards.
Yes. And he knows more about them than he ever dreamt. He knows more about them than really anybody in the company that builds the forklift. He kind of has this knowledge gained from fixing cars on the independent side of things, having to figure out how stuff works and all that training he went to. We have entities like that that need a fraction of our skill sets that can offer so much more. And that's really what we're up against is we got to raise everything up, everything, incomes, wages, compensation, benefits, culture. People want to work here, love working here, like working here.
And what I like to, talk to the business owners about is like, hey, you want a business that's obviously profitable, right? But you want a business that's easy to run. At the end of the day, what all business owners want is they don't want to show up and have a problem every single day. Hey, it's a revolving door. I'm always losing technicians. And when I hear a shop owner say, man, I just can't find any help. I'm always losing technicians. People are quitting on me. It's always, those MFers, why would they do that? And it's like, look at that guy down the street. His average length of employment is 12 years. He's keeping all of his guys here, right? So do you think that this is the people that just are quitting off you? Or how are you treating them, right? This is the same guy that doesn't want to give any holidays out because if you're not there, you're not making him any money. Health insurance is not his problem. That's your problem. Tools, that's your problem. Uniforms, that's your problem. And so I always tell them, it's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, are you going to be paying more and are you going to hurt your profit in the short term? Absolutely. But what you're going to build is you're going to build a culture and environment that's going to be a lot easier to run. And really in the long term, you're going to end up making much more money off of this. Right? Because I'll have people that will call up and say, hey, you know what? So-and-so came and they're making 35. They want to make 37. That's $2 an hour. And I said, do you realize that that's $4,000 for the entire year that it's going to cost you? How much work does that guy bill out in 2 days? Maybe 6,000. And I just am silent. And he goes, oh, exactly. Quit being cheap. Pay the person, right? They deserve it, right? If they're asking for it, then they probably deserve even more. And not only do you need to probably give that person more money, you need to look at the rest of your team to make sure that you're in line. Because if you're without that technician for 1 week, you just shot yourself in the foot. You should have just paid them, especially if you're a 3-person shop, right? I'm giving the technicians all the leverage here, right? If you're a 3-person shop, you lose one of your technicians, you just lost a third of your workforce. In a larger scale, you just lost a third of your potential sales for an entire year. Right? If you're a 3-person shop, probably doing about $1 million a year, you're now a $600,000 a year shop, right? You didn't lose a technician. You just lost $300,000 in sales, and once people start wrapping their head around it, like you said, going back to the organism, like, hey, this is all a team. It's a very fine line. These are not, the people that we're talking about, people that you're dealing with, other than the forklift guy, these are not organizations with 100 employees. Right? They're usually wheelhouse that we see is probably 8 to 15. Everyone is essential. Everyone is there for a reason. And you got to make sure that you take care of them.
When we're talking about stuff like this, and this is maybe pulling on your economics background, when I here's this stuff and talk about this stuff, it screams like Deming type things. Dr. W. Edwards Deming, and kind of his philosophy of management and really getting out of the way of employees. And by that meaning getting out of their way of performing their job as productively and efficiently and accurately as possible. And not just management itself getting out of the way, but removing obstacles that prevent employees from accomplishing that, as well as obstacles preventing them kind of joy and work. That's something we never really hear is joy and work. And maybe they're not going to be singing the whole time like the 7 dwarves, but for the most part, they enjoy where they're working. What may that be? But, better lighting, organization, systems that make sense to help them stay as productive as possible, especially when you've mentioned flat rate a couple times. I'm a horrible one to ask about flat rate because I have really mixed feelings about it.
I think most people do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shops out there that have set themselves up in such a way that flat rate really is a good way of compensation. However, a lot of them have used flat rate as another means of motivation and management, and those are the ones that fail epically and gave it a horrific name.
You hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, as an accident.
No, but I mean, you're exactly right. So if flat rate can hide a lot of bad ownership, a lot of bad managerial skills, because you've already given them the motivation. Do your work, you'll get paid more, right? Hands off. If you have a good team, they're organized, they're going to knock it out, flag 50, 60 hours a week. They're happy as a clam. You're happy as a clam. Everyone's making money on it, But flat rate also rewards inefficiency. It rewards hoarding of work. It rewards shoddy work. It rewards rushing through jobs. It maybe rewards, a lot of different things that if done without management over a long enough length of time, you're going to have these issues. And then, the other flip side is, well, I can't put my technicians on hourly. They won't do any work. I got plenty of shops that pay all their people salary, pay all their people hourly. And what they need to do is they have good foundations. They say, hey, you know what? They have goals. They know what they need to meet. Am I hounding them about hours all the time? No. I know that they're doing their best. I put a high emphasis on quality, and that can work as well. Realistically, the model that we're seeing a lot of people go to is kind of a hybrid, where it's hourly with a bonus, hourly with a kicker, depending on how many hours that they're selling. Really, the big thing that has been the push recently, if it works, this doesn't work in all shops, is a team-based model. Hey, I need 100 hours out of the shop. I don't necessarily care who is doing this, but you guys need to come together as a team. If done correctly, which is not an easy thing to do, that's going to be the most successful shop for not only the owners, but the technicians. Now you have a vested interest to get that general service guy a little bit more training. Now you have the vested interest to show him how to do that stuff versus saying, get out of my way. I'm taking that job because I know I can flag an easy 4 hours on that one, And so it's one of these things, like you said, flat rate. Some people say it's, from the devil. It's, you're taking advantage of people. And if done incorrectly, absolutely. You've seen it happen. I've seen it happen, but it's not that easy.
You start to want to only do certain jobs that you can make time on.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's like a tiered flat rate system where, it's not really a flat, whatever number, 35 an hour flat rate. It's if you bill 30 hours, it's $30 an hour. 35 hours, it's 35 an hour. 40, it just kind of keeps going up and maybe peaks out at whatever, 50. I don't know. Well, they only want to do jobs that they know they can kill it on so that they have a chance to hit the 50 hours because that's where they get paid $50 an hour. And it's kind of a double-edged sword where now they're pumping out work, but now they're avoiding this job that nobody wants to do because nobody's going to beat the time on it, or they're going to just make time or beat it by a little bit. They're not going to kill it. So nobody wants to do it. And that, and now you're out there barking at them because, hey, it's got to get done. It's got to get done. Well, you've set up the rules and now you're expecting intelligent people not to work the system in their favor.
We see it all the time, right? It's like, well, hey, then they're gaming it. I'm like, again, going back to it, like they're their own business. They're not stupid. They're not going to take that break job where they're like, well, I can beat this by 15 minutes. That's not going to get me where I need to be. I need that job that, calls for 12 hours. I know I can do it in 6. Give me 3 of them. But then the tricky part on this too is we talk about this industry and people getting out of this industry. How long can your body physically flag 60 hours a week? And you've seen it. It's like it's physically breaking down people, and you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself because the technician that we're seeing right now is, the average tech age is getting up there. And physically you get to a certain age where it's like, you can't do this anymore. It's getting a lot less labor intensive, I think, than what we've seen in the past. A lot of the technology, a lot of the equipment is, a lot more ergonomic and saving people's backs and knees. But at the end of the day, this is a physical job and it takes a toll on people.
The age used to track very closely to my age. When I got in, of course, it was much older than I was. But boy, I think when I was kind of starting to get into my 30s, it started kind of tracking close to mine. But it's tracked. Now it's ahead of mine. The average age is now older than me. It's mind-boggling. And yeah, there are some amazing physical specimens out there, meaning they're in their 50s, maybe even 60s, and they're still turning a lot of hours doing a lot of heavy work, but quite a few of them, one twist and it's over.
Well, let's talk about that. I think that's a good one because as far as what technicians need to be doing to protect themselves, and this is, goes into the physical and also the financial. If you do not have disability insurance or something like that, you need to get it. Aflac is probably the biggest one out there. Everyone talks about it. Everyone hears about it. It's extremely, extremely cheap. Most of the time, this is something that you would talk to your employer and the employer would come in and offer it for everyone. But if not, you can go out and get disability policies outside of it. I'm pretty sure I might be a liar on that, but I'm sure someone else.
No, I think you're right, especially with like Aflac.
I think you can go out and get it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're thinking about this, talk to the shop owner and say, hey, how about if we have someone come out and talk? Because most of my shop owners that offer disability insurance, generally, they don't even pay for it. Some of them do. It's silly cheap. A lot of them, it's $15 a month or something like that. But you've now protected yourself because I've seen it. You've seen it. I got a technician that gets hurt. Now, if you get hurt at the shop, that's what workers' comp is there for. They're going to pay for that. But when you go home, you're not going home and sitting on the couch and sitting in a bubble. You're going out, maybe you're riding your motorcycle, maybe you're just driving a car, maybe you're walking with your kid, anything. If with my job, if I hurt my back, it doesn't matter, right? I don't do anything. I type on a computer, I talk on the phone. Who cares, right? I can be laying in the bed doing that. If you're a technician, you hurt your back, you're done. And the only way to get better is to not do anything for months at a time. And if you don't have that disability insurance, you don't have a paycheck. Right. And if that didn't happen at work, now it's coming out of your pocket. So get disability insurance, do it ASAP. It's so cheap that you should not be, operating without it.
Yeah. And I'm not positive this would be up your alley, but our shop had a fire a little over a year and a half ago. And unbeknownst to me, and really unbeknownst to most people I know, we lucked out. Really, no employees, tools, or equipment were harmed, for the most part. I mean, it really gets down to it. We found out that the shop's insurance really only covers the employees' tools and equipment for I think it was like $5,000. It was absurdly low. It wouldn't even pay for the toolbox.
Yeah, like, what is that going to get me?
Even the most well-intentioned owner manager would ever even dream of asking. Here's this coverage. Here's everything that's under the roof. It's covered. And then they find out potentially the real hard way of, okay, my policy only covered $5,000 and you have $50,000 worth of tools to replace. Now what?
And for how many technicians is their toolbox maybe the most valuable asset that they have?
Toolbox, maybe scan tools if the techs have had to buy scan tools. But yeah.
If you're an average person and you have a truck and you're driving it out and let's say it's $20,000, you'd be like, I'm not going to drive without insurance on that. That's crazy. What if I crash? What if I total it? I can't afford to pay for this. I have a loan on it. I go back to the Snap-on guy. It's like, hey, your toolbox burned up and Snap-on does not really care. They still want their payment on it. You are a business, protect yourself, right? We talked about disability insurance, protect you personally from this. You talked about the toolbox burning up. Well, also think about it this way. It's like, hey, and every year we have 1 or 2 fires in shops. It's just going to happen. It's, we see it. But I've had shops that are out of business for years, arguing with insurance, arguing with the landlord. And now luckily, the job market's pretty good. You can go work somewhere else. But if you want to stick it out, you're now going 3-4 months without a paycheck. Hopefully that they have business interruption insurance that can pay for that stuff. But again, you got to make sure that you're protected on your end as well.
Yep. And just what I looked into it to buy it myself, it's fairly brutal. It is not like Aflac.
That one's a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a lot bit more. This is like, borderline unattainable. Like, wow.
Now, I'm not sure. You probably talk about this. So the last couple fires that I've seen have been caused by impact batteries.
I don't have an official cause.
You got to be careful
but
saying
I will just say, well, I mean, I don't think I'm not really outing anything. I'm not saying what the vehicle was or anything, but it was a fairly new vehicle. It was involved in a very, very light collision. So it was at our shop to diagnose parking aid. So the ultrasonic sensors in the bumper. The body shop, the collision shop had replaced the bumper, painted it, replaced a couple of sensors, and the parking aid still wasn't working properly. That's why I was at the shop. And we ran it in, and per the cameras, you can't see it outright. It seems to emanate from that area.
Was it an electric vehicle?
Nope. Just a newer SUV, small SUV. And kind of where the battery sits. Again, I'm not implying that's exactly what happened or anything, but it's really in that area.
The last couple that I've seen, now I had one that happened recently that I don't think was caused by this, but the last 2 before that were both caused by impact batteries, from an impact gun on the charger, overcharged. When you overcharge, a battery, they go kaboom, right? Think about the Chevy Volt, right? Chevy Volt, is on a larger scale. They overcharge, they overheat, they explode, and these, and like you, they had cameras and they took a look at one of my shops. Now, luckily it was mostly just smoke damage, but they came and investigated this. They swore it was arson because they could see a fire start here, fire started there, fire started there. They looked at the camera. Sure enough, impact battery was charging on top of someone's toolbox, exploded, went over, set on fire a trash can. That blew up some brake clean bottles. Those brake clean bottles went somewhere else and started a fire. And the fire inspector was like, I would have bet my life this was arson. And I saw this video and it's like, holy cow. And I'm not sure what you guys do. I have a couple shop owners that they do not allow people to charge the batteries overnight. I have some people that they put all the battery chargers into one of those fire safe cabinets.
We don't go quite that far. Unplug all the battery chargers.
Yeah, the big thing on it is a general battery that's in good health shouldn't really explode. But you aren't always just placing that, 1/2-inch impact down nicely, right? Sometimes those get slammed. Sometimes those get chucked. Sometimes they get used at hammers, right? I'm guilty of being like, I don't have anything. I'll just whack it with the bottom. Milwaukee builds these things pretty good. But yeah, I mean, you get one of those cells a little bit split or something like that.
That is insane.
Yeah.
No, my theory is that something happened and, it sucks, but I had just driven the vehicle in to the shop. It was in the middle of winter, January, cold. And I think we're going to get some snow. So you park it inside so the snow plows can plow at the parking lot. And the battery's proximity to the fuel line, which is plastic, I think it just got really hot and melted the fuel line. I had just driven the vehicle in, so it's pressurized. And now it's got a source. And, I don't know if you've ever popped a fuel line off or seen somebody take a fuel line off with a pressurized system. It can pump a fair bit of fuel.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. And so now it's kind of got a source. And once it gets rolling, as horrible as it was kind of amazing to watch on camera. How it kind of went from not much to wow. Just a fireball almost.
Well, you never know, right? It's like, all right, was in a body shop, a ground wire got loose. And so it was arcing out and getting hot and sparking, it's just, who knows? And, think about all the electronics that are on every car. Like you said, it was in there for you to diagnose a sensor on it. I mean, these things are just filled with electronics now. Where in the past, the only risk of fire that you had is, all right, is the fuel tank going to leak? Is the fuel rail going to leak? That's it. There was nothing on there. Now it's like there's computers, there's wires everywhere that, you get a little crimp, you get anything, and they could go up. And yeah.
Another shop I had worked for many years ago, I guess as kind of where I started, it was a carbureted minivan, an older Chrysler minivan that was carbureted. And one of the techs was torching on the exhaust. And then, it's pretty close to 5:00. So they shut everything off like they should and left. For the life of me, I will never be able to answer this. I lowered the vehicle. I have no idea why I did it because I was ready to just leave, lock up and go. I lower the vehicle and I kid you not, there had to have been a 6-inch flame coming out of the top of the carburetor. So he had the air filter and everything off of the carburetor and he's torching underneath and it must have been just enough or a spark or something lit vapors from the carburetor and it was just sitting there burning. And I'm not saying the building would have burnt down. We probably would have had a fair bit of smoke damage, but what in the world? It's like, man, you almost have to have a shop operating procedure where vehicles that have been torched on or welded on or batteries charged where, man, somebody just take a look at them quick before you go. Because I've heard about interiors getting lit by welding in proximity to carpets or seats or whatever. And
just undercoating, right? Even if you go like you weld, like I was welding something on my car the other day and it's, I'm welding a plate onto a subframe and a feet away, you got undercoating that starts to melt. It's like you're throwing so much amp through that. And that's like what's underneath. And then, the crazy thing is on the unibody cars, it's like, hey, what is in between there? And then you look up in the trunk and the trunk is now on fire.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. But, going back to if you're a technician, it's like, if they're not doing stuff safely or you have other people in the shop or you're in the shop where the shop owner allows this stuff not to be done safely, it's more or less could come back and bite you because, hey, if Matt doesn't care and he's smoking a cigarette while he's welding next to this Chrysler with a carburetor, that catches on fire. Now you don't have a shop to go to either.
God, that used to be a thing. I never smoked, but I know shops that I used to work at, the older guys, not necessarily, it wasn't always the older guys, but everybody was, when I started out, everybody was older than me. So, but yes, cigarette hanging out of their mouth. It's insane.
Yeah. Cigarette out of your mouth, spray an old school brake clean, which would actually catch on fire, you know?
It's like watching old Tonight shows or whatever. They're all smoking and it's like such a different environment nowadays.
Well, it's like, when you used to go into a restaurant and be like, oh, we're going to go into the non-smoking section that was divided by a booth with nothing else from the smoking section. It's like, all right, this makes sense.
Yep.
Now imagine if you do it now, like if you went to, think about you went to Applebee's and lit up a cigarette, I think they would just probably call the police and start shooting you or something. Be like, what are you doing here?
Any restaurant, any bar.
People have lost their edge, right? Can't even smoke a casual cigarette anywhere anymore.
Yeah, I don't smoke. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like any of it for me. But I did think it was a bit of an overreach to mandate no smoking in somebody else's business. Like, if they wanted to be no smoking, they could make it no smoking.
Yeah.
Nobody would come, and don't get me wrong, like I don't miss going to these establishments and not reeking of smoke and whatever, but I just don't like it when there's some entity basically telling you how to run your private business.
Well, it's just one of those things where it's just like, there's something that hasn't fallen out of favor so quickly as smoking. You can't even smoke outside anymore. You got to go into like the pagoda of shame, and that's where you smoke, right? Yeah. It's like, no, you can't smoke on a sidewalk. Go over there in that, gross little pagoda where it's got, an ashtray that's on fire and smoking out of it and stuff like that. I don't smoke anymore, but I did for a while.
So it worked. All the frustration of what they did.
They annoy you enough that you're like, you know what? If I can't smoke on an airplane anymore, then I don't even want to be here. Everyone's got so PC nowadays, right? Getting back on track, one of the things that before I forget, you can see how my mind works here. I want to talk about interest rates. You brought up a good point about interest rates, and I just did an episode on interest rates, and everyone hears about interest rates, but people don't realize, especially when you kind of jog my memory and you talk about some of the Snap-on financing, I see a ton of stuff, 0% financing, right? Same as cash, 0% financing. So a couple of things on interest rates is, hey, when they say, well, we're going to be able to save you money because we're going to be able to put this on, in-house financing. Do you really think that they just want you to save money, or do you think that they have a vested interest on it?
A tremendous vested interest.
And even the stuff that you'll see is, well, hey, they're going to put me on this credit, but it's 9 months, same as cash, 0% financing. Why wouldn't I do this? And I'd agree. If they have something like that where it's same as cash, then do it. If you can pay it back in that time period. Because what people don't realize is if you read that fine print, let's say you buy a $10,000 toolbox and they say, well, you can pay me cash right now, or you can do 0% financing for 12 months. Every single person is going to say, well, I'm going to do 0% for 12 months. But what they don't tell you is you don't have to pay them $1,000 a month. They'll let you pay less. Hey, Matt, pay us what you want. But what happens when you hit that 12 month? And even if you owe them $1, right? If you've given them $9,999, that interest rate is 20%. Let's say it's usually not very good. You now owe them an extra $2,000 because they go back and they say, well, you actually accruing 20% interest this entire year. If you give us all your money back within a year, you don't owe us anything anymore. But if you go to 366 days with any sort of balance, now you get hammered with all the interest. And that's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand. Oh, it's 0%. Oh, it's same as cash. It's if you can pay it in that time frame, then great. If you cannot, you're in big trouble, right? And if you do have something like this, if you have higher interest rates right now, go shop it around, right? You can do balance transfers on credit cards. You can do a lot of different things. Interest rate is the silent killer that is just sapping people dry. If you have a high interest rate credit card right now, get it to something else. Go to creditcards.com or something. You can compare all of this stuff. Interest is the biggest killer because you're not getting anything out of it. And, the scary thing is they had to start doing this on credit cards because most people don't understand this. But when you get a credit card statement, you have a minimum payment. And now they got to put that really, scary box on there that says, if you make the minimum payment, you will pay us back in X amount of years.
23 years.
Yeah, literally. It's, think about it. It's like if you buy something for $1,000 on a credit card, it's going to go up because interest rates are going up. But usually it was 19 to 23%. I'm guessing it's mid 20s now. So you just paid 25% more for this, right? And I preach this to shop owners all the time that run their business off of credit cards, right? Regardless of what you think as a technician, some of your shop owners are making no money, right? They're the lowest paid employees. And I always tell them of like, hey, you marked that part up 25%, you bought on a credit card that you can't afford it, you're actually selling that part at a loss once you factor in the interest. But, if you're a technician, you're no different. So make sure that you're handling that stuff. And like I said, there's so many options out there. With a couple of clicks, you can transfer it. Oh, you got a Citi card, giving crazy interest rates. Go transfer it over to a Chase card. Just got to be very careful with that because a lot of people that I see aren't in a ton of debt, right? It's a pretty big blanket statement. Not like you got $100,000 of credit card debt, but you got 10,000, you got 12,000, you got this nagging amount that you just can't seem to get away from. And it's like, before you worry about trying to invest in the stock market or you go out and you want to buy Bitcoin, go pay off that credit card. Because what I tell people is, hey, Matt, what if I told you I could give you 20% guaranteed rate of return on your money? I have an investment. There's no downside. It's a guaranteed 20% rate of return. Everyone's going to jump on it, right? Interest rate for a savings account's 0.1%. All you got to do is pay off your credit card. What? And it's that simple. Look at your percentage rates that you're paying on stuff, and that's your rate of return. And if you're sitting here listening to this and maybe you like toys, right? You like toys, you like four-wheelers, you like side-by-sides, you got it all, but they're all financed. And you have finally woken up and you said, I need to get out of this because at some point I want to retire. Where do I start? I always start with the highest interest rate. Knock that one out first. More or less, sometimes balances come into consideration, but usually I'm just going to look at straight interest rates. I got a truck loan, that's 4%. Leave it alone. Don't pay it off early. I got, this other payment, it's at 6%. That's fine. Leave it alone. It's not too bad. I got this credit card, 16%. That's what we're hitting first, right? And everyone, talks about, I'm going to pay off my house early. There's a lot of economics behind that are like, you're going to pay off a house with 3.5% interest? Like mentally, I get it, right? You're going to own it. But from
it's the largest balance, but yeah.
Yeah, but from a financial perspective, you're getting a 3.5% rate of return on your money. And even worse, because you have, some of that's tax deductible, right? And so start hitting the higher interest rates and start getting rid of those is going to be your best course of action.
Yeah, and when you get it paid off, set it aside, hide it, whatever. Don't close it. I don't think you want to close the credit card.
Don't close them. No, you don't want to have a credit card that has an annual fee. Unless you spend a bunch of money. If you spend a bunch of money and you're smart with credit cards and you know how to work the points, some of them can pay for it, right? I use Amex. Amex is my personal preference on it, but all Amex have fees. I spend enough where it makes sense. Most of these credit cards have different perks on them. Look at the fine print for it. A lot of them will give you credits for Uber. A lot of them give you credits for, any number of things. Make sure that you're utilizing that. But if you're sitting here and you want to increase your credit score, one of the biggest factors of your credit score is credit utilization. Banks want to see Matt have the ability to spend $40,000, right? He's got 4 credit cards with $10,000 balances, but you only carry $2,000 balance. That is going to give much better credit than me that only has 1 credit card with a $2,000 limit that I've spent $2,000 on. And that's going to be a lot better credits.
But yeah, get that paid off. And then a lot of times gets referred to as debt snowball. Let's just say you're doing the minimum payments on all your cards except for one, that you're just as much as you can muster every month hitting it. So let's just say all the other ones, the minimum payments are $100 a month, and you got 3 of them. And then you got the high interest rate one, the 23, 24, 25% interest one. And the minimum payment is maybe $100 as well, but you're going to throw everything you got at it. So let's just say you can muster $200 a month. When you're done with that, park that card. Don't put anything on it or keep the balance extremely low. Now take that $200, pick one of the other 3, and now you're not paying $100 a month on it or $200 a month. You're paying $300 a month and kill it. Again, don't close it, but kill it. Put that aside. And now you're paying an extra 100 on top of that. So now it's 400 a month against that second one, and then 500 a month on the last one. And now you don't have credit card debt anymore. And you could, for, reasonably maybe take that money, and if the only other thing you have is your house payment, I suppose you could throw it at your principal, but kind of like you're saying,
I'd rather have that in the bank.
The interest rate is, such that it may not justify such action.
Yeah. Number one thing of paying down debt, first thing is make sure that you have cash reserves. First and foremost. It bugs me. I see it on the business side. A lot of people start making money, right? It's the same, like we said, technicians, your own business. As soon as people start making money, they start trying to pay down debt, right? They try to, right their past transgressions. But then what ends up happening is if something bad happens, you don't have a savings account to fall back on. So the credit card goes back up. Right now, we're caught in this vicious cycle. And so what I always tell people is first and foremost, I'm getting my cash reserves. I'm getting that rainy day fund set aside, right? Before I'm even trying to tackle my debt. Now that I got, whatever it might be, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 set aside, I say, all right, that's here. This is so I don't have to go back down that path again. Now I'm starting to attack my debt.
And when you're saying that wasn't the shop number. That was an individual. Are you thinking roughly 3 to 6 months of?
I use the same thing for shops, but personally, yeah. I mean, the good thing about personally is there's no number that's too high, right? For businesses, there's liability. But yeah, I mean, you want to at least have 3 to 6 months of operating expenses, meaning something happens. Hey, economy's looking really good right now. We don't have to worry about inflation. We don't have to worry about interest rates. Nothing bad is ever going to happen anytime soon, right? What happens if we have a slowdown? What happens if monkeypox turns out to be the real deal and we all get shut down again? You need to make sure that you have the reserves for yourself, for your family to make sure you can get by. Because again, like we said, if you don't have those reserves, then your reserve is the Citi card, the Chase card that has money on there, but that's 20, 30% interest.
If you had that $10,000 sitting there, your house payment's $1,000 a month, you've got 6 months easy with extra money. And like you said, more yet for every expense, electric, power, food.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing here is, you need a budget. You need to live within your means. The Dave Ramsey approach is you don't use a credit card because you're not spending money that you don't have. This kind of goes back to our original question about philosophy on refunds. You got to recognize what kind of person you are. Credit card is the best thing in the entire world if done correctly. You're literally getting paid to spend money. I never carry a balance on my credit card. I'm getting points back on every single dollar that I spend. And also, if something happens, if someone steals my identity, they run up the credit card. I say, I don't care. American Express, figure out who that was. That wasn't me. I'm not giving you guys any money. If you're using your debit card, you'll get your money, right? You'll get it back, but they're going to figure out what happened there. Then they get it back, And so if you have the, personal control on it, use a credit card for everything. I do not ever bring my debit card out. I don't swipe it anywhere. I don't put it into a gas pump because, probably once or twice a year, I have a fraudulent charge or, I have to get a new card or something like that. But it's all credit cards. So it doesn't really matter, right? But a debit card, they're bringing money out of your bank. Yeah.
And we might have to get a dictionary so everybody knows what budget means.
Yeah. A good thing is, here's another one that I use on a shop owners, but it works for anyone as far as savings. And a lot of shop owners are not good at saving money either, right? So don't think, I'm a technician, my boss is doing a better job. Depending on who you work for, I could probably tell you if they are or they aren't. But what I always tell people, especially people that don't have a good way of saving money, is start with a specific dollar amount that you want to start setting aside. You can do this on a weekly, maybe more than a week, but I'd like to keep it short because I like to keep it a repeatable thing and also a smaller dollar amount. Every single week, transfer $20 into a savings account, maybe preferably at another bank that's a little bit harder to touch. And like clockwork, every single Monday, $20 is going to come out of your account. And that's going to start to grow. And once you forget about it, you're going to say, all right, that's nothing. All right, make it 25, make it 30, right? And then you're just going to grow that. The big thing here is a lot of people try and jump out of the gate, right? They try and be a hero and they say, I'm going to do $500 every single Monday. They do it for 2 weeks and they're like, crap, the car payment came up. I can't do it. So start with something incremental that you can grow and you'll be kind of, surprised at what you can set aside.
Wow. We just killed an hour, man. I don't know about killed, but
I think we solved all technicians' financial problems and they've got it all figured out now. Go back, hound your boss for more money, threaten to leave.
They hit the pause button when they heard that and then they're not listening to the rest of it.
Well, no, that's what it was. It was like, all right, they're figured out. They got their withholding straightened out for when they asked for that raise or they quit. And then now with all this extra windfall of cash that they've negotiated, we've taught them how to save that and pay off their credit card debt.
That is a really good twist on it. We're rolling with it. That's what we're going with.
We're going to stick.
I got to change the title of this thing.
How to fleece your boss and save that extra money.
Wow, man, I really do appreciate you coming on. You got any final thoughts, really, or?
No, I mean, the biggest thing on this is, try and be smart with your money. Take it from me. I've seen more financials, more tax returns than, most people would care to look at. And what I always tell people is it's, like I said before, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you spend. The truly wealthy people, and wealthy doesn't mean you're a billionaire, right? It means that you could retire at some point and not have to worry about things. Those are not the people that made the most money. Those are the people that live below their means, right? They bought the stuff that they needed, not the stuff that they wanted. And maybe your 30s, your 40s, maybe you don't have the nicest car. The other guy's got a 2500. Hey, you're still driving that old, Tacoma. But when you become 50 years old, when you become 60 years old, now you have options. Now you can retire if you want to. Maybe you don't want to retire. You don't want to be that old curmudgeon that's in your shop that's 71 years old and is pissed off because they have to keep on working because they did not set themselves up. Start early. Compound interest is a magical thing. Be educated on this stuff. Don't get discouraged. Don't put your head in the sand. Try and chip your way out of it. I guess that's all you can do, right? Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on here. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully there was some insight in those ramblings, huh?
No, thank you again, sir.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone, to listening. Be sure to try to check into Hunt has his own podcast. So there's a lot of stuff that does translate very well directly to text, speaks to text. Has a great one on inflation. Really, no BS. It's must listen. And another one on tech productivity, which, it is aimed at the shop and shop management, but it's a good listen. Helps get your head wrapped around how important you are to business, really are. And check out the Aftermarket Radio Network. Thank you so much to Napa for the sponsoring. And anybody, any questions or ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, mattfonslowpodcast@gmail.com. And until later, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fonslow, Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fonslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.